Hello, everyone. This is Debra Richardson, and today I am putting the AP in Happy, where accounts payable teams are empowered to protect the vendor master file from fraud. This podcast will give a voice to accounts payable team members by talking about the growing reality of cyber attacks in their world and which vendor setup and vendor management techniques they can apply to protect the vendor master file from fraud. Need training? Visit the Vendor Process Training Center to enroll in your choice of weekly live and on demand training sessions. Plus, get access to vendor setup form templates and reference tools that will help you and your team avoid fraud, fines, and bad vendor data. So, sign up for a free account to get access to free training sessions, vendor process FAQs, and a resource library with information you need to manage your vendor master file. Visit training.debrarrichardson.com today. The link will be in the show notes. If you are satisfying your company's IRS tax requirement or reporting requirements by using the IRIS platform from the IRS, you may be interested in what I found while creating a demo of the system. Keep listening. Welcome to episode 321. One critical thing I learned testing the IRIS system. Now, if you haven't heard of it, the Information Return Intake System, or IRIS, is one of the newer platforms, or a new platform. Actually, it was available as of January 2023 for tax year 2022 for free electronic filing. And it is it has actually two separate ways that you can file. You can file manually through the IRS taxpayer portal, so you can do it yourself. And then, or you can e-file with software through the IRS application to application program. So this is for where you have a third-party software or service, and so you can use IRIS A to A to e-file thousands of returns at a time. So that's not usually the audience. I'm not suspecting that's who you are. And so I usually focus on those folks that would file through the IRIS taxpayer portal. And so with that, I created a training session called IRIS Small Volume E-Filing 1099 MISC and 1099 NEC to tackle or to provide some training content for those folks that might need it. And so I'm going to put a link to that training session that includes the demo I'm going to talk about, or where I found this out at, in the show notes. So if you're interested, you can navigate and take a look if that's something that you would like to enroll in. So in any event, I did that, and there were some things that were a little bit surprising. So, but there was one critical thing that was very surprising. Now, first off, let me just say that with the IRIS system, it is for now only for a certain amount of forms. So, within the training session, I talk about whether or not it's the pros and cons, or whether you should check or use the FIRE system, which is the legacy system for e-filing with the IRS, or use the new IRIS system. So I gave some kind of facts about both so you can make a decision. But for now, the biggest thing is if you have 1042s, you can't file those in the IRIS system. And so if you have both 1099s and 1042s, you might as well go on over to the FIRE system. But the e-filing or the IRIS system has more forms than last year that you could file through the IRIS system. And so you could always file though 1099 MISC and 1099 NEC as of last year and this year. So we're going to focus on those two. And so in preparing the demo for the training session, I thought, wow, this is going to be not easy, but it really was very easy. The whole process was easy as long as you were manually entering. I will tell you that I tried to do the CSV template upload. Is very easy to download the template, but you have to save it in a CSV in order to upload it. And if you're opening it up in Excel, even if you save it as that particular CSV is the one that has the USB 8 on it, if you're saving from Excel. But when you download it, populate it, and then save it from Excel into that CSV, UT8 CSV file, comma, separated values file, it changes, right, some of the information. So it changed for me the telephone number into that format where it has the plus sign because the numbers were too long for the width of the field or the cell. And so it was just hard. Every time I tried to upload it, it told me there was no, the file supported was not correct. And even though it did take the file and recognize the file, it wouldn't let me start. And so I always had to keep going back to the file to figure out what's wrong now. I will say, though, that some of the issues that I had was related to the fact that I did not read the instructions first. And so when you go to the screen where you can download, and then upload the file on the right hand side, there are some FAQs. And within those FAQs, there's another link to another page which gives you a little bit more information. But really, what I found is that the publication 5717, the IRS Taxpayer Portal User Guide, that has much more information on populating that template, and it will answer some of the questions that maybe some of the other areas didn't have. Like the big one for me is that it had a field where you had to indicate whether as payer you were a business or individual. And so I just typed out business when it really should have been a B. So those are the type of things that you need to make sure you're looking out for, that comma separated file. But I will tell you, I abandoned that, but I did do a demo on creating a 1099 NEC using the IRS taxpayer portal, and it was very easy. But this is the critical thing that I learned while I was testing the system or doing that demo. I couldn't use any of my real vendor information because it's, real vendor information. And so what I did is I went out to the Securities Exchange Commission, the SEC site, and I went on their page with the Edgar database. And in the Edgar database, it houses the financial reporting that is required for public companies. And on some of those reports that they file, you will find the information you need for 1099 NEC. You'll find their name, their tax ID. You'll also find their address. And so I pulled the information for two different companies, for Microsoft and then also for Facebook. And we all know Facebook is Meta, but did you know that it's Meta Platforms Inc. is the formal name? Well, anyway, found that out when I downloaded that or went and got that information. And so I had to do the test like 3 or 4 different times. And so I thought, well, I'm not going to go get any more information. I'll just reuse the information I already had. I figured it would stop me at some point. But this is the critical thing, is that it did not. I was able to add in 1099 forms for Meta twice and for Microsoft twice. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete them because they are test information, but I was able to enter them and I got no. Now I didn't submit them, so at some point maybe it would have told me that I have multiple recipients for the same form types. I don't know because I wasn't able to submit them, but keep in mind that the system will let you create duplicate tax forms for the same type of tax form. Now, in reality, on the IRS platform, when you are completing the forms, there is a form number field. Even though I selected 1099 NEC, there is a form number field, and they do give an explanation saying that if you have to submit the same type form or the same form for the same recipient or the same vendor, then you have to give a form number so the IRS can distinguish between the forms. And so that was something that's there that can be used. And they gave an example of someone getting multiple pension payments. Now, I'm not in payroll, don't deal with pensions, so I'm not quite sure if that's something that would be a thing. But if it is, then you would add a form number so that the IRS again can distinguish between the forms. And so there must be the ability to submit multiple forms of the same type for the same vendor. However, keep in mind, if you have made a mistake and entered a vendor's information in twice, and you are submitting duplicate or multiple same types of forms for the same vendors out of error, you want to make sure that you're always checking on your unsubmitted forms list for duplicate vendors with the duplicate using the same form. Now, it may be required that you might have to have the same vendor and send them multiple types of forms, a 1099 MISC and a 1099 NEC, for example. That's fine, but you want to make sure that it is not in error. So that's the one critical thing I learned testing the IRIS system, is that it took the multiple forms for the same type of form using the same vendor's information. Now, again, if you want to take a look at the training session to see if that's something you would like to enroll in, I am going to, again, put a link to that training session in the show notes. So thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the 321st episode of the Putting the AP in Happy podcast, where accounts payable teams are empowered to protect the vendor master file from fraud. Don't forget to check the show notes for the links mentioned in the podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing and writing a review of my podcast on the platform that you use to listen. Stay happy.